Let me get to the point here. I was listening to an English translated narration of a Spanish Plants vs. Zombies pasta called U53RDV, and I thought it would be a good enough creepypasta to read here on the channel, with me having to translate the story to at least be readable. Plus, I am not sure how many Spanish narrations there are, but I thought to get this out of the way. P.S. I am likely to be in hiatus until the month's end, what with Christmas coming around the corner and such. Other than that, I hope you guys have a good December and also happy early holidays. What is it, Macy? Feeling a bit lonely here? It's going to be okay, girl. I know it feels lonely, but I have to work here. I'll see you guys later. I might have to help out Macy. A very typical feature of video games are cheats or tricks whose functions are to alter the gameplay or make certain visual changes. In some, they are activated through menus where a specific button press is inserted, or in more complex cases, changing the game completely, and Plants vs. Zombies is no exception. All these tricks are activated by means of certain writings that we will have to do on our keyboard. However, there is a trick that makes the whole game change in a very drastic way, and not for good. And not only that, but another thing that differentiates this cheat from the others is that it cannot be activated at any time we want, but we have to write it in a specific part of the game. Today I am going to tell you about a very strange experience that I had with this game, which has to do with this alleged cheat that I mentioned earlier, and I hope I don't make the terrible mistake of activating it again. It was around 9 o'clock p.m. I was on my laptop, getting ready to record my weekly PvZ gameplay. I had turned on my screen recorder before I opened the game to make sure everything was in order and there weren't any incorrect settings. Until then, everything was perfectly normal, but once the game had finished loading, I was surprised to find that I was asked to create a new profile. At first, I got pretty upset. I thought I had lost my progress permanently, and for no reason. However, I remembered that I wanted to back up my game, but apparently instead of copying my game file, it just saved it. I moved to another location. I wanted to close the game to now make a copy of my game and restore everything, but the game wouldn't let me exit. I had to create a profile to be able to exit, so I typed anything and it came up, U53RDV, and this was the first step for the strange thing to start. When I clicked on accept, the screen went black and a notice appeared that said the following. Warning, a command has been written that will enable developer mode for this game. Continue anyway. When I read that, I was excited. I started to imagine all the possibilities I could have with developer mode, and without thinking twice, I clicked yes. Unexpectedly the game crashed. I guessed this was because the game needed to be restarted in order to activate the developer mode. I was surprised to see the game name and icon changed a bit. Eagerly, I opened the game to see what the changes were, but the changes were something totally different from what I expected. The game became very strange, even somewhat diabolical, at least that's how I perceived it. Everything was distorted when I entered the menu. Everything looked unpleasant. The username was not the one I put, but it was replaced by developer, which made no sense to me. I saw everything. It was dark, pretty nasty, for a pretty innocent game. I don't know what the hell this had to do with developer mode. Unfortunately, human beings are too curious, so I went through the game options to see what changes they had. They had all changed in a nasty way. My whole game was complete. It was just as I had left it before this, but it was not at all normal that there were all these strange changes. I noticed that in the Zen garden watering and a speech bubble appeared, which, instead of having the usual drop of water, said HELP. I clicked on it to see what it meant by that, but the game crashed. I was afraid to open it again. I felt that something was wrong, but I didn't want to stay intrigued that other things have changed, and I decided to open the game again, a serious mistake. This time, I decided to enter Crazy Dave's store. Luckily, I was able to enter without any problems. However, Dave looked a bit bugged. He had no body, just his head and arms floating in the air, and he didn't say anything, just he would stare. Smiling, I went back to the main menu as I was starting to get nervous. I had the feeling that, at any moment, a screamer was going to jump me. Enter the almanac, and this was what made me more interested, since even the characters underwent changes. In the part of the plants the changes were not so drastic. Some had their normal design, others were crying or had a sad expression like the pea shooters or the sunflowers, some, like the chumper or the spikegrass, had blood, and others like the squash they had their eyes rolled back. However, the zombies had one change in common, which is that they all had empty, completely black eyes, and some had blood on their faces. Finally, enter the adventure mode. When clicked, the zombie head appeared as always, but the music and the sound were extremely loud. It was a deafening noise that luckily did not last long. The screen went black for a few seconds. After a while, it recovered. The garden also changed a bit, since everything had a red filter. In this part I was curious to see what it felt like to play a level with these changes. I chose my plants and started the level. At the beginning, the letters, instead of saying, ready, set, PLANT, they said, prepare to DIE. I got a little nervous, but I continued with the level. The first zombie appeared and I began to prepare my defense, although there was also a change here, and that was that when the pea hit the zombie, it dripped a little blood. However, there was something more gloomy, and that is when the zombies died they left a pool of blood where they fell. This was already Plants vs. Zombies too dark. From there, everything continued as normal, nothing out of the ordinary apart from the aforementioned changes. I even began to forget my fears and I was beginning to entertain myself. This made me trust myself to such an extent that I thought that I already thought nothing bad would happen. As I reached the end of the level, a few questions were still going through my head, like why this creepy look? Why the word HELP in the Zen garden? Why developer mode? I kept playing, and finally, I reached the last horde. I just had to wait for the plants to eliminate the remaining zombies. Finally, I had completed the level, but when I clicked on the bag of coins, the screen went black and lighting sounds began to be heard. The zombies had eaten all my plants, and out of nowhere, I lost the level. Instead of the usual message, when you lose a level, blood stains appeared all over the screen, and the screaming seemed to go on forever. However, I realized that my laptop had completely locked up. I couldn't close it. Nothing. I was paralyzed, but for some reason, the recording was still working. I knew that sooner or later the blue screen would appear. I took out my cell phone and started recording my laptop. Finally, the blue screen appeared. Even though I already expected it, I felt too afraid. I felt that something would appear on the screen at any moment, and unfortunately, it was. The blue screen disappeared, and suddenly, an image of a deformed vampire willow jumped out, with a giant mouth, sharp teeth, white eyes and a white face, with a loud and terrifying sound in the background. Quickly, I tried to shut down the laptop forcibly, but it didn't respond. No matter how much I pressed the shutdown button, nothing happened, while the image multiplied and distorted more and more. I got the image and text to disappear, but the sounds kept on changing and changing. Sometimes one was more horrible than another. The laptop still did not respond, even though I kept pressing the shutdown button. Already tired, I decided to close it with a strong blow. I had no other choice. Fortunately, I managed to calm it down. I realized that my laptop had gotten too hot. For obvious reasons, I didn't want to turn it back on. The next day, I took my laptop and touched it to see how it was. I couldn't believe it. It was still a little warm, but it was a temperature that I could bear being turned on. So, with some fear, I turned it on hoping that nothing happened the night before would have affected it somewhat. To my luck and relief, it started without any problem. However, I immediately uninstalled the game and decided to avoid it for at least a few weeks. Afterwards, I started to check my email to see if there was anything interesting, but to my horror, I received a message whose sender I could not believe. It was a user called U53RDV, the same name that I used to activate the developer mode. The message was in English. Translated, it said this: "You figured out what the game was to be." I was one of the developers of Plants vs. Zombies. I wanted the game to have a more realistic look, but they rejected my idea, and after some discussion, we went as far as insults, and this got me fired. As revenge, I hacked the computers where the game was developed to anonymously modify one of the versions of this game. Congratulations, you were the first victim to find my version. Now as long as you have the game installed, your computer and all your data will be sent to me. And don't bother trying to uninstall it, because once this email is marked as read, a virus will be installed that will force your computer to have the game permanently installed. Thanks for playing. Sincerely, U53RDV. Fortunately, I uninstalled the game before that supposed virus was downloaded by reading the mail. Reading that message has made my desire to have the game go down even more, and until now, I don't count on Plants vs. Zombies, and the absence of this game on my laptop may continue for a while. This has been the worst experience I've ever had playing Plants vs. Zombies, and I hope that not only with this game, but with the others, I avoid going through something similar again.
I seriously need to put something up to cure loneliness, because she is acting rather cuddly with me, while I have been recording this entire fucking thing.
But I would like to thank you guys for watching this video, and I do apologize for that small intrusion there. Macy was wanting some attention and I didn't want to have her interrupt this.
So, before I do go, I like to thank you guys for giving me some kind of support. Or, during this time. I know it's not really much, but I guess what I'm trying to say is thank you guys for 25 subs, I guess? And I hope you guys have a good holiday. Or whatever. I'll see you guys around next month. Ciao. Also, here's whatever footage I have. I was going to record, and am about to record. See you guys in the next year of 2023. Peace.